Good evening out of wherever you are, touching ladies, gentlemen, boys, and girls. We are back with another video. Yeah, and as you guys see down below, we are actually reacting to the downfall of the Arrow, Part Two. Um, by hold up, let me bring it up. Ross. I can't pronounce his last name, but I watched two of his videos, um, um, and as I said last time that we did a video like this, I love superhero shows, and I mean, like, I watched the first season of The Arrow, and watching the first season of The Arrow, it was something that, like, it was at the time watching it, it was like, oh wow, like, one, Oliver Queen in the comic books isn't Oliver Queen that is in the show. Oliver Queen in the comic books is not like quote unquote Batman like he is in the show. So I actually liked what they did with Oliver Queen in the show. So yeah, I think it's pretty dope. I think it's cool. I love it. It's great. And I like the Arrow. Like, the Arrow was, I have to say, probably one of the more consistent shows at the time out of the Flash and Supergirl, and probably one of the shows that it still had bad writing. Of course, it still had bad writing, but I think I think out of the two who interacted with the most at each other, the Arrow and the Flash, the Arrow was more in with it, you know. But yeah, without further ado, I don't want to keep this from not. I don't want. I just woke up too, by the way. Um, I don't want to keep talking about it and all that stuff, but um, yeah. If you guys, as always, guys, if you guys want to watch this video uninterrupted or anything like that, go head down. Ross's YouTube video will be in the description down below. And if you guys have never seen any of these, spoilers, spoiler alert, big time. But yeah, guys, without further ado, edit the corn. If you find something, play my shit. The Downfall of the Arrow, Part 2. I have to say, I think the Arrow had probably the best background music out of the two.
So Oliver is now being trained to take over the League of Assassins, but it turns out that he was faking his allegiance the whole time, and he and Malcolm Merlyn are working together to take down the League from the inside. Why is Oliver trusting Malcolm? And why is Malcolm still alive? Oh, I forgot to mention the flashbacks this.
Yeah, that's the thing I didn't understand. That Oliver was that was a very a thing that I didn't understand why Oliver was working with Malcolm. But at the time when I was watching The Arrow, I was like, oh no! I'm like, oh wow, that's very smart of them. That's very smart of them, making Oliver Queen work with Malcolm to take down the League. That's a great idea. I love it. I love that idea. So yeah, yeah.
This season, didn't I? Basically, Oliver runs around Hong Kong a lot, and that is a literal description of most scenes. He's just running around Hong Kong because he and Argus are trying to find this biological weapon called the Alpha Omega. Real original name there, writers. And it turns out that in the present, the guy who was helping Oliver find the Alpha Omega in the past, Maseo, joined the League of Assassins and gave it to Ra's al Ghul, and Ra's tells Oliver to use it to kill everyone in Starling City. Apparently, if someone becomes Ra's al Ghul, they have to destroy their home, which would be really awkward if they came from New York or something. Remember when the villains of past seasons were motivated by revenge, pain, and loss? Ra's al Ghul wants to destroy Starling City because it's just kind of what he does. This is also the most boring Ra's al Ghul of all time. I mean, sure, they do give him some cool action scenes, and he does seem like a really effective fighter, but most of the time he just stands around and talks to people. So, to try to stop the League from destroying their home, the rest of Team Arrow, along with Katana and Malcolm Merlyn, attacks Nanda Parbat, and wow, Laurel is really fighting those League of Assassins members well. Remember back...
That's another thing that was kind of a thing. One, Laurel, my hatred for Laurel is not to the point of my hatred for Iris, but it's semi there. And when Laurel died, I was like, yes! And then they brought her back. Really, CW? Just kill off a fucking character and deal with it. The fact that Iris was going to die in season 5, that was a good idea. Sorry, the fact that Iris was going to die in season 4, that was a good idea. That was a great idea. And then you didn't follow through. Really? Really?
Back in season 2, when Sarah and Oliver were having trouble fighting one member of the League. Remember a few episodes ago when Laurel was having trouble fighting thugs in a back alley? Yeah, this all adds up. So Ra's al Ghul locks pretty much every side character in a room and releases the Alpha Omega virus into it. Wow, I really feel the tension of this situation. I hope everyone makes it out okay. I'm sure they're really dead. Oh look, they're not really dead. What a shock. Ra's al Ghul then releases the virus into Starling City, and members of Team Arrow go to stop the virus around the city. And, I don't think Thea has the cure for the disease. Diggle, maybe you should tell her to take a few steps back, because she's definitely gonna get infected. So Ra's al Ghul is like, 1v1 me mate, and Oliver goes to do it, and predictably gets beaten. Ray finds a way to disperse a vaccine for the Alpha Omega across the city, but if he does it, he won't have time to go save Oliver in his suit. Felicity's logic in this dire situation where millions of lives...
Also, I don't like Felicity either. No, I don't. Y'all remember how I literally just said that my hatred for Laurel was around the same hatred as Iris? I lied. Felicity is just a blonde-headed version of Iris. But worse.
Lives are at risk is...
What? No! Ray! Oliver!
It's one life against the cities. What would Oliver do?
Yeah, this is when Felicity starts to become unbearable and also a terrible person. So to beat Ra's al Ghul, Oliver decides to use the same moves on Ra's that Ra's used on him when he killed him. Because I guess Ra's has no way to defend himself against his own moves, which he should have recognized as soon as Oliver started doing them. So Oliver wins, Ra's al Ghul is dead, and Felicity even manages to save Oliver.
If I could figure out how to get this thing off, I would be kissing you right now.
I'm pretty sure it's just a helmet. Seriously, you can fly that suit, but you can't operate a helmet?
Yeah! Felicity.
You're lucky you're still alive. You wouldn't be had you not been wearing League armor.
I mean, not wrong. CW, fix your writing for God's sakes.
So with the city saved once again, Oliver decides to retire with Felicity.
You did not fail this city, and I promise I will not fail you by leaving it again.
But whatever, I guess the massively less experienced members of your team will be fine, and technically the Arrow is dead, so what are you really gonna do? Oliver isn't really good at making good decisions, especially considering he makes Malcolm Merlyn the new Ra's al Ghul. I'm still questioning why Malcolm is alive, but Oliver just hands him the most powerful army in the world.
My only aspiration was to free myself of your father's grasp, a feat we both managed to achieve.
I don't see how it was possible.
Thanks to Oliver.
When I was your father's captive 3 months ago, he tortured me with his blade.
And you survived because my father chose to release you.
Funny thing, prophecies.
So the season ends with Oliver and Felicity literally riding off into the sunset.
Can I say something strange? I'm happy. Pull the trigger! Do it! Do it, motherfucker! Pull the trigger!
But little did we know there was nothing but dark times ahead for the series. Overall, this season was a big step back and put everything that was weak about the show on full display. The story was fine, but the main problem was the stupidity of characters all over the place that just made everything...
Thanks to your writing. Like, see, if I would feel a lot better about season 3 if the writing was better. I love the action scenes. The Arrow action scenes was amazing. I love them. Like, they're great. But the thing that gets me all the time is the fact that if they made smart choices and did other things, those action scenes would not have occurred. And she wouldn't be so unlikable.
Seemed ridiculous. The only time that the season really shined was when the Flash showed up, because the chemistry between Oliver and Barry is really fun, and it was also pretty incredible to just see those two characters together on screen.
Exactly.
So now we're in season 4. And since much of the Arrow fan base was unhappy with the garbage fire that was season 3, and made that unhappiness very known, I figured the creative team would do their best to get the show back on track. And initially, it seemed like they actually might. Everyone was talking about a lighter tone, Oliver got a new costume, there were promises of more comic book elements to be introduced. I was skeptical about this, mainly because Arrow worked as a darker, more realistic show, but sometimes change can work, and if there was one thing I thought Arrow needed, it was change. So did season 4 recover? Well, I wrote a little song about it.
No.
Yeah, season 4 is basically where the show just falls off a cliff. Executive producer Speed Weed. Yeah, I'm gonna need some speed weed to get through this. I mean, season 3 was bad, but it made sense to a certain point. There were some good plot developments. There was some decent character work. But season 4 is so full of internal contradictions and just zero logic that I seriously questioned whether anyone who worked on the series in earlier seasons was still around. I have no idea how people could watch season 4 and see the same show as season 2 because it seems completely different to me. So the season starts off with Oliver and Felicity living in the suburbs together, a peaceful life of romance. Oh good, just what I always wanted to see.
Felicity Smoke. You have failed this omelet.
But
I thought it was cute because I fucking love that line. I love his "you have failed this city" and everything like that. I love it, but thinking about it, yeah, it was kind of cringe. It was very cringe. Ain't gonna lie.
a new threat has come to Starling City. Well, Actually, it's called Star City now, like the comics. Renamed in, I don't think that's how naming cities works, but okay. And I guess Oliver leaving Diggle, Thea, and Laurel in charge of protecting the city turned out to be a bad idea. Wow, what a shock! Honestly, I don't think you can trust anyone who thinks that wearing this is a good idea. So the characters go to bring Oliver back, and it turns out that Felicity had actually been helping them the whole time. This is the first instance of Felicity's extreme hypocrisy because apparently lying to her is like the worst thing you can do, like ever. You lie to her.
Exact. Literally, Irish West. And I should make a video on why these two characters I do not like. I'll let Ross tell you.
She loses her mind. She gives you a 5-minute lecture on lying.
I cannot hear another lie. You're the only person on this planet who considers the truth complicated. I care that you lied to me just now.
But she also lies to Oliver repeatedly and about very important things. So Oliver comes back to his city.
And she doesn't tell Oliver the truth. She's a hypocrite. It is too early. It is too early to show my undying hatred for Felicity Smoke and the fact that she has the audacity to throw Oliver underneath the bus because, or to have Oliver feel bad about keeping secrets because, his secret identity and all this stuff that happened to him on Lee and You, which is understandable. But Felicity, nah, fam, you should have just told me. Now our entire relationship and marriage is on the line. Fuck you, Oliver. Even though, Felicity's been helping Team Arrow, and she lies to Oliver, and all this stuff, and ends up doing things behind Oliver's back, and, doing other things, and, okay, yeah. Yeah.
And faces off with this season's main villain, Damien Darhk, who possesses magical abilities. One of these abilities is the cheapest way to film superpowers in TV history. So basically, this whole season is about Oliver and his team fighting against Damien Darhk and his organization, Hive, to try to stop them from destroying the city. Wow, the main villain wants to destroy the city? Man, these writers are just really reinventing the show with every season. It's just so dumb, and the focus of the season shifts around so much that it's really hard to keep track of what we're supposed to be caring about. The flashbacks are just meaningless at this point, and don't serve in any way to inform us of how Oliver became the person that he is now. It's pretty much just a retread of the Season 1 island plot, but with no Slade and with magic. Also 1000% worse. In the present day, Oliver is now running for mayor, a plot line which really just meanders along. The plot is essentially, oh, I'm running for mayor. Oh, I can't run for mayor. Oh, I'm mayor now. And that kind of points to why the show may have gone so far downhill this season. Oliver Queen is the main character of the show, allegedly, but they don't give him a story. They don't give him any room for development. He just kind of sits around when he's not going out to fight. But Oliver isn't fighting as the Arrow anymore. No, the Arrow is dead. Now he's the Green Arrow. I'm pretty sure people would be able to figure out that it's the same guy. Oliver is the same character as he's always been, and just because he goes through some bad stuff sometimes doesn't mean his character is growing. On top of that, Oliver seems to lose all of his fighting ability and is able to be beaten by pretty much anyone he comes across. He was trained by Ra's al Ghul. Just a reminder, this season basically turns Oliver into a complete idiot. Instead, the person who gets all of the focus and plot is Felicity. Hooray. I remember when Felicity was a character that I really liked because she's really good in small doses and was a fun, quirky source of comedy relief. That was her purpose. But she becomes the focus of everything and becomes this weird sociopathic character. She's just despicable. Her worst moment comes in this year's crossover with The Flash, after Oliver learns that he has a son he never knew about. Felicity finds out about his son. Side note, she actually says the line,
I run enough tests on your blood to recognize your DNA sequence anywhere.
what is that all about? Anyway, Felicity finds out and loses her mind and just breaks up with Oliver because he didn't immediately tell her about the son that he found out about that same day.
You know that my whole world just exploded? And I think that I'm entitled to a minute to process that by myself.
You somehow managed to go to CCPD and track down Barry. You didn't keep it to yourself, you kept it from me. When were you planning on telling me?
I don't know.
And why didn't he tell her? Because the mother of his son told him not to tell anyone, very specifically anyone, or he would never see his son again. But Felicity treats this like Oliver.
He went to Barry because, quite frankly, Oliver, in his own way, trusts Barry more than he trusts Felicity, for one. Two, he didn't even tell Barry what he's looking for. He just wanted Barry to run a sample of DNA to just to make sure. Barry figured it out on him by himself of what's going on. Get out of here, Felicity.
Hid the kid from her intentionally. Barry resets the timeline, but later on in the season, she leaves Oliver again for the same reason. What? Oh yeah, and she also has a semi-character arc. I say semi because nothing of substance really happens, and when you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. Felicity gets paralyzed when Damien Darhk tries to kill her and Oliver, and this for some reason causes her to question her place and her usefulness on the team. Yes, her role on the team, which primarily consists of sitting down, is clearly very deeply affected by being in a wheelchair. Yeah, Arrow totally isn't borrowing anything from Batman.
Overwatch, we're on site.
Excuse me?
Well, I thought that it was time you got a code name. What do you think?
It's perfect.
I was gonna go with Oracle, but it's taken.
Nope, it's completely its own entity. And that whole paralysis thing, it's not a big deal. Felicity's walking again in about 5 episodes, thanks to magical technology. Her hacking ability pretty much becomes magical too at this point. I mean, she hacks a drone from a tablet in like 5 seconds while she's being shot at. She also detonates a nuclear bomb and wipes out a whole town, but doesn't even seem to acknowledge it. You know, like a person.
God, what am I doing?
It's okay, sweetheart.
Don't sweetheart me. You don't get to do that, but you're right. I can't get wrapped up in this.
And I think I maybe could have forgiven her if she hadn't dragged the rest of her family into the season, because Donna Smoke is the worst character in the history of the world. Donna Smoke is the Jar Jar Binks of Arrow.
I have it handled. I wouldn't be a Jewish mother if I didn't worry.
All of the family and personal drama is centered around Felicity. They even introduce a villain who turns out to be her father. He's also a hacker, so I guess hacking is a hereditary trait now? In the world of Arrow Season 4 logic, probably.
What is it? To be or not to be?
So Oliver and Felicity now have this terrible on-again, off-again relationship where they love each other, but Felicity just can't be with someone who can't trust her. Yes, Felicity can't trust Oliver, even though the mother of Oliver's son tells Felicity to her face, "Hey, I told Oliver not to tell anyone about our son, so don't blame him, it was all me." Felicity still blames Oliver and acts like, well, he still should have told me.
Felicity.
I know the position Samantha put you in. I know it was an impossible decision, but you were right. You should have told me. You're sending William away, and I understand why. You know that I do, but once again, you have left me out of the decision.
Please die in a fire. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That Oliver, Felicity, or Olicity relationship is the plot that gets the most focus this season. And since
Please do not call it Olicity.
it seems so terrible and dysfunctional, there's no reason to care. But they just keep shoving it down our throats because a bunch of people on Tumblr really like them together, and the writers said, yeah, we can definitely pander to that. This is the CW after all. Yeah, for some reason, I just can't really get on the same side as people who harass Stephen Amell, telling him to leave his wife and daughter and marry his co-worker. And yes, that actually happens. There's a whole conspiracy with the Olicity fans that Stephen Amell's marriage is all a sham, and he really belongs with the woman who plays his girlfriend on TV. They even Photoshop pictures of Stephen Amell and his wife and daughter. They Photoshop Emily Bett-Rickard's face onto it. It is the creepiest.
Why are fans like this? Oh my god, I didn't even know about this.
I hate the internet so much sometimes. In terms of
the internet is
story,
trash.
It would have made much more sense to just kill Felicity at the mid-season finale, like they almost did, but she stuck around and things just got worse.
Felicity may have gotten her brains from you, but she got her creativity from moi.
Matching lipstick to lip
And
line.
while I may not
You're
be
always such a
father of the
stick in the
year,
mud. Oh, try the past 2 decades.
Yes, I recently took a
let's all take a
I
shot
don't
at
know
advice.
for me, just like I know what it is.
It's weird, because I remember not having much of a choice in the matter.
It's so funny. Not.
Should we go? Should we continue this? Yeah, let's fucking continue this. Part 3. Here we go. I gotta scroll down. Boom. Part 3. Okay, are we done talking about Felicity Smoke, please?
Once again, this season really suffers from an extremely underwhelming villain. Damien Dark is the weakest villain in the show, mostly because he has no motivations, but his plan is also the most generic stupidity I've ever experienced. And it's a shame because Neil McDonough seems to be the only person having any fun, and he gives a very charismatic, fun, energetic performance. When we're first introduced to Damien, his plan appears to be to destroy the city so he can use it as a base of operations for Hive. That's fair. But then he has this big field of corn underground, and then his plan just becomes, I'm gonna nuke the world! What's his motivation for doing this? Nothing. Never explained.
Truth be told, it's
Not dissimilar to the plan I had for the Glades once upon a time, but on a much, much larger scale.
The action is the most notable element that decreased in quality this season, because it went from quick-paced, well-choreographed, and exciting to this. That looked terrible, right? Now imagine 23 episodes of that.
Looking back on that, yeah. I take back what I said about me liking the fight scenes.
My favorite action scene is in the finale, where we finally see the climax of the epic rivalry between Oliver Queen and Damien Darhk. These guys were both trained by Ra's al Ghul. Just a reminder, when Wet Hot American Summer has the same fight choreography as you, and it's played as a joke there, then just give up. Another problem is that Oliver and Darhk fight every few episodes, so there's no real tension being built up between them. There's no sense of what's it gonna be like when these two fight, because they fight all the time. Thematically, I think the story
realizing that Oliver uses the same
of this season was about
realizing that Oliver uses the same spin move over and over and over and over again in the same fight, not spread out, but in the Oliver, do better. Well, he can't now because he's dead. Oliver's dead. Like, it was in the crisis it was in the crisis episode. The arrow's done. Like, it's done.
Oliver trying to come into the light after being in the dark for so long, but that didn't really happen. And if it did, it was in the most stupidly obvious way, because Oliver's method of countering Darhk's magic literally comes from the power of love and hope. Who's writing this? What adult is writing this? Oh yeah, and that lighter tone they said the show was going to have this season, that didn't happen either. There were a few more scenes that took place during the day, I guess, but the tone of the show was pretty much the same. I guess they tried to introduce some more comic book elements, most notably with characters like Constantine and Vixen, but it was so poorly done, and it seems ridiculous because the show is still trying to be grounded and gritty along with it. As soon as they introduce characters to the world of Arrow with powers like Damien Darhk's, Oliver's bow and arrow suddenly means nothing. It is irrelevant. It worked in a grounded, realistic world, but it does not work here. The Flash show works so well because it doesn't take itself too seriously and has fun with the ridiculous stuff it's doing. But Arrow tries to make it all seem dramatic, and it just falls so flat.
Where's the boy?
And the first 8 episodes of the season were devoted to setting up characters for Legends of Tomorrow, a problem which also plagued the beginning of The Flash Season 2, because stories that could have been given more time to develop had to be replaced with all of this setup. So yeah, this season just kind of
True.
meandered along with no plot developments or changes, and the characters all stayed the same. Even if they had some arcs to deal with, they were resolved in a way that left the character unchanged. I mean, nothing important really happened. Oh yeah, right. That's the treatment that
I did not smile at that. That I continue.
Laurel gets this season. You know, the Black Canary, that character who's just totally unimportant to the Green Arrow. I know I said before that I didn't really like Laurel, but she had become a bit more likable this season, and this was the point where I realized that the writers legitimately didn't care. As soon as Laurel had found a good place as a character, as soon as she was secure, and actually had a unique part
And as soon as I hated someone else in the Arrow more than Laurel,
to play as sort of the moral center of the team, they kill her off as unceremoniously as possible. Compare this to the death of Moira Queen in Season 2. This entire scene is great. The acting is great. The music is great. The tension is rising slowly as the scene goes on, and you really don't know who's going to end up dying. And then Moira Queen, this manipulative, borderline villain of a character, sacrifices herself for her children, and the death makes sense to the story because most of the season, for her at least, had been about her redemption. Laurel, a main character since episode 1, gets this.
She's gonna be fine.
How many daughters is this guy gonna lose over the course of this series? He really needs to smoke some speed weed. I'm honestly surprised that Captain Lance's heart condition hasn't killed him like 16 times already. Laurel's death is much like Sarah's, where it was just a part of a mystery that was going on throughout the season, but had no weight beyond that. From the beginning of Season 4, there was this flash forward happening in some episodes where there was a grave, and we didn't know who was in the grave. I mean, the writers didn't even know who was in the grave. Wow, just like Breaking Bad. These shows are on the same level in every way. That method really worked in Breaking Bad, but maybe these writers should have planned something out, because Laurel's death did not feel like it was right for the story. It just kinda happened. Oh, but obviously it's because we wouldn't want any possible obstacles in the way of the precious Olicity relationship, because that's what the show's really about at this point. Laurel's
can we stop calling them Olicity? It's just too cringy, and I don't like Felicity.
last words are literally her telling Oliver to be with Felicity. Are you kidding me?
I'm really glad that you found Felicity. And I hope you find your way back to her.
The writers even show a fundamental misunderstanding of characters that they created. A huge part of Diggle's character was how his brother's death affected him, and when this season began, they started to give some more details and clues because Andy's death had previously been connected to Hive, Damien Dark's organization, and I thought we might actually get an answer to why he died and figure out this whole mystery. Turns out he was alive the whole time. And why is Malcolm Merlyn still alive? Oliver has the chance to kill him and just end all of his problems. But no, he just cuts his hand off. And then Malcolm immediately tells Damien Dark about Oliver's son, and then he gets a robot hand. What is going on? Why doesn't Oliver just call Barry and ask him to punch Damien Dark in the face real hard? Why does Oliver not call Barry to solve every one of his problems?
Basically, it's a collector of magic.
Here I thought earthquake machines were as strange as they got.
Diggle, you know a man with super speed. What do you mean earthquake machines are as weird as it gets? Are you smoking something? Are you smoking some of that sweet speed weed? Why is there a person who professionally goes by speed weed?
Wait, is there an executive producer in Law & Order SVU named Speedweed? I should know. I don't pay attention. I love Law & Order SVU. Or is that just a joke? Because like you can't throw Law and Order SVU and not make me believe that there's some. That's a joke. I think it's a joke.
I feel really lightheaded, guys. In the end, Arrow is a show that really let me down, and let down most of its fan base too. You don't need to look far to find examples of how much hatred is directed towards the show now, and the most annoying thing about it is that the people who run the show think it's the minority of fans. Arrow didn't start off as a cheesy, stupid, typical CW romance show with some action in there, but that's certainly what it is now. You know, if they didn't show such contempt for their source material and for their audience, maybe people would still like the show.
You thought I was leaving too? Not a chance.
That is how season 4 ends, with Felicity straight up saying, "No, I'm not going anywhere. You thought I was? Nope." I don't think I've ever seen a more intentional middle finger towards an audience in my life. So with that being the last thing we've seen from Arrow, what do we have to look forward to at this point? Well, basically nothing. I mean, all of the interesting characters just left at the end of the episode, and while I'm sure they'll be back in season 5, what plot do they have? What can they do at this point? The real question is, can Arrow come back? Can it be restored to its former glory? Well, I wrote a little song about its chances. Low. I can't remain optimistic anymore. So far, the showrunners have been promising a return to the old days of Arrow for season 5, but I don't believe in them anymore. I don't believe that they can make an entertaining season of television. Possibly not even an entertaining episode. I mean, what are we really supposed to be getting excited by? A cameo by Cody Rhodes? To be fair, if he is playing his character from the WWE, Stardust, but like as a villain with superpowers or something, I will watch that episode and that episode only. They're introducing the character of Artemis as well, but I really don't have any faith in them to adapt a comic book character in any interesting way. If we want that, we'll have to watch The Flash or Legends of Tomorrow or now Supergirl, at least for this universe. When I watch those shows, I feel the love for the source material. I feel drawn into the world. I feel like I'm really watching comics come to life. Whenever characters from Arrow show up on The Flash, the writing for them is so much better. They're so much more charismatic, funny, and entertaining, and the actors have these huge smiles on their faces the whole time, because the Flash writers know how to use their characters well. There's lots of
We're watching the same show, right?
entertaining comic book based entertainment on TV right now, so don't stick with Arrow anymore. It's just not worth it. Right now, all Arrow is doing is pandering to the squealing teenage fangirl market that the showrunners seem to think makes up the majority of the fans, but even those screaming fangirls are getting tired of it. It took all of season 3, but I finally took off my rose-colored glasses from when the show was really good, and I now recognize that it's complete garbage, and I hope that others can do the same. Oh, excuse me. I should say green filtered glasses in honor of Oliver's new suit. Yeah, I bet you didn't notice that. They actually put a green filter over Oliver's suit in all of his scenes in it to make it seem brighter. Instead of, you know, just making another costume that's brighter.
Hey, you and Donna. Don't worry, she's safe, but I had to come back and stay on my city because this Oliver Queen guy gives a hell of a speech.
You two were supposed to stay as backup.
Why did it look like Oliver was walking through a pool when he was walking up to Damien? Thanks. Thanks. Okay, I didn't know they're going to be giving me all these updates. Look at that. Look at that. Look, he's swimming.
Whatever, who cares? It's basically Felicity's show now anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if they make her the new Black Canary in Season 5, so that way Green Arrow and the Black Canary can actually be together on the show. Oh god, I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
That would actually be good writing, but they didn't.
The writing is bad, the acting is bad, the action is bad, the effects are bad. For God's sake, Oliver doesn't even fire arrows anymore. And when the show called Arrow doesn't even feature arrows in any large capacity, the time has come to let it go. Oliver fired more arrows in his one episode in Legends of Tomorrow than he did for half of the season. Speaking of which, that episode of Legends was the first time in a long time I felt like I was watching an episode of Season 1 again. It felt like I'd been transported back to a time when Arrow was just as entertaining as its counterpart shows. As of right now, I'm done with Arrow. I tried, but it was never worth it, and I don't see any reason to continue watching. Season 5 will have a lot of work to do if they want to repair all of the damage that's been done. It won't be easy, it won't be quick, but maybe if the writers would stop tweeting pure cringe every 5 seconds, they might get some good work done. Arrow went from my favorite show to my least favorite, and if you still intend to watch Arrow when Season 5 rolls around, I can't stop you, but just know that you deserve better than this.
Mom, are you okay? Are you okay?
Mm-hmm. The Christmas lights.
Uh-huh.
I found this. Going to pretend. Princess cut no climbing this little rope. No good for the tail. Not the side of it.
Have your back the same way you have
That place cool. Deja vu all over again.
How about kick your ass like a woman instead?
First thing I know, thousands of people in the city will die.
No! Oliver!
My eyes are bleeding!
Alright, but yeah, I mean, the Arrow had moments. They had moments later on. But I think, as with The Flash, as soon as they started bringing in other characters to Team Arrow, it just fell off. It really did. I mean, if you don't do it correctly, it will make the main character fall into the background. And that's what happened with that's what's happening now with the Flash, because Barry Allen is just not the main character anymore. And that's what happened with the Arrow. So let me know you guys is if you guys have watched the Arrow or the Flash or any of the other CW shows. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. If you guys like today's video, please hit that like button. If you guys like what you guys see on this channel, hit that subscribe button and that bell notification to get notified every time when I upload a video. I love you guys. You guys are amazing, wonderful people, and I'll see you guys in the next one. As always, stay classy, my friends.